A second federal class action copycat lawsuit that has the potential to drastically change the residential real estate industry has been filed in Nevada.
Have you been seeing all these headlines lately?
That there's a conspiracy to artificially inflate commissions between Valley real estate agents and the National Association of Realtors via the multiple listings service.
Hang tight, and I will be breaking down this entire lawsuit mess and how this affects your pocketbook as a buyer and or a seller. NashiraGamino here, and before we get started, I want to highly encourage you to sign up for our monthly newsletter. There is going to be a comment down below that you could click on to do so, but it includes all of our market updates, featured home tours, mortgage information, and about 10 things to do each month in the city of Las Vegas and Henderson to keep you and your family entertained. And of course, if you're looking to be a buyer and or a seller, my team and I would be delighted to have that conversation with you to build out the plan to help you accomplish that mission. But let's go ahead and get right into this. Let's go ahead and break down to what this lawsuit essentially was about. So there was a gentleman named Nathaniel Whalen out of Missouri, and later you'll hear about Andrea Boykin, but Nathaniel, who is out of Missouri, and I believe in October of 2023, opened up a lawsuit basically saying that he should have not been responsible for paying such a high percentage to the listing agent and therefore covering not only the commission from the listing agent, but also the buyer's agent. Now, I mind you, when these listing agreements are set on the front end, a listing agreement has to be signed and the terms have to come to mutual agreement before the listing makes its way to the MLS. And everything is discussed as far as commission, the terms, how this is going to happen, how that is going to happen. Hopefully all done on the front end. That contract has to be signed. So Mr. Whaley was well aware of what the percentage was that he was paying out. So he went through with the transaction. I'm assuming that he got his property sold and then came back and said that he shouldn't have agreed to that. And then before you know it, a bunch of copycat lawsuits like the one that Andrea Boykin filed here in Las Vegas also came about, and then a bunch of them started popping up, calling out every brokerage, the National Association of Realtors, big brokerages like #1 cloud-based brokerage in the world, eXp Realty, and others like Keller Williams, Berkshire Hathaway, and just a plethora of big and small boutique and local brokerages. The National Association was accused of fixing these commission rates and driving up the prices of these home values, which is absolutely false because there is no set commission of realtors when it comes to buying and selling real estate. It is 100% negotiable. If you want to pay a buyer's agent $1 or your listing agent $5 or a certain percentage, you may do so. It is all negotiated and should be discussed on the front end. So with that being said, this lawsuit, which has not been approved by the court, basically will change 3 things. #1, as compensation to the buyer brokerage, and that box will essentially go away and be no more. #2, the sellers are still able to offer concessions to cover the buyer's closing costs or maybe even the fee that would be paid to the buyer's agent to represent them. And #3, a buyer brokerage is going to be a requirement for a buyer and a buyer agent to come to an agreement on the fees up front before they go out and show homes and write contracts and negotiate on their behalf and essentially represent them in a transaction. So the National Association of Realtors so far has decided just to settle the lawsuits, and any member under the National Association of Realtor umbrella, which includes over 1 million members, local realtor associations, and any brokerages with a residential volume of 2 million and below in 2022. Let's go over the 3 main reasons why NAR settled this lawsuit. So #1, they could have appealed this lawsuit. However, it would have forced them to post a $5.4 billion bond and forced them into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which just was not going to happen. And #2, which is probably the most important one, was if they did appeal, that would have left a lot of smaller boutique local brokerages to defend themselves. And that could be very detrimental to the industry, probably forcing a lot of them to shut down business and close their doors. And number 3, bankruptcy, which was just not going to be the case, which is why the National Association of Realtors decided to settle the lawsuit. So the settlement is going to result in 2 major category changes. So number 1 falls under financial, and that's the monetary compensation to be paid for those that are involved in this class action lawsuit. And within the next 4 years, they are required to pay $418 million. And under the rules category, there are going to be 2 things that are going to have to be changed once it's all approved by the court. So number 1, as we mentioned before, it's going to prohibit on the MLS from putting in a buyer's agency compensation. And number 2, realtors will need a written agreement between the buyer and the buyer agent. So let's go ahead and break down how this affects you as a future potential buyer. So number 1, please always remember that pretty much everything in the contract is always going to be 100% negotiable, especially when it comes to the fee of the agent. But also keep in mind that you will get what you pay for. People who meet their realtor for the first time usually end up going with that one. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a family or a family member or a friend of the family, or somebody who knows somebody that recommends this person over to you. But what we recommend doing is meeting with at least 3 different agents, getting a feel for what services they provide, whether your personalities kind of match, and if you can see this agent working for you and in your best interest. So you're also going to want to budget correctly. So you're going to want to set money aside not only for closing costs and down payment, but now you're going to want to include another category, which is the service fee for buyer agency. Now, it may take a little bit more time to reach these financial goals, as with increasing home prices, it is going to make it a little bit more difficult, especially for our first-time home buyers. But there's several things that we can do. So I always recommend meeting with those professionals to help get you the answers in acquiring your property. And the good news is that even though it's no longer required for the MLS to have a space in there for the seller to put a seller concession, what a seller still can do is offer a buyer concession or concessions to go towards those costs as far as closing costs or the buyer agency service fee and different things like that. So it is still going to be a negotiable item to help the buyers that are trying to purchase these properties from sellers. Now, you as a future seller, you might be wondering, how does this affect you? Once again, what you pay your agent and what you may or may not pay your buyer agents are completely negotiable and 100% up to you to figure out and negotiate that on the front side. So keep in mind that it is and always will be and always has been a negotiable item. That does boil down to you having 3 main options. Number 1, you can pay just a listing agent to help you in the sale of your property. Number 2, you can offer to pay your listing agent to represent you, and you can also give a concession to the buyer to help cover their buyer agency costs, just like it has been. Or number 3, you could proceed without any agent representation and just go at it solo and do a for sale by owner transaction. There are several reasons on why you might want to consider putting in those concessions that will cover both the seller commission as well as the buyer commission. However, the biggest one that I see is you would want to do that because you would want your side represented as well as the other side represented to know that the deal that you make will see it through all the way to the closing table. Now, of course, even today, with agency representation on both sides, it doesn't always pan out that way. But the likelihood of you getting to the closing table and selling your property and or purchasing your property is going to be highly likely, especially if you're doing all of your due diligence on the front end, interviewing several real estate agents, making sure that you did your best to choose the best agent to represent you. Then everything else just goes up and you feel confident in your decision that they will get the job done. Because the last thing that any seller wants is just to keep accepting offers that never make it to the closing table. And if you've been in that situation, you probably know that it's very exhausting. It could be extremely time consuming and it could cost a lot of money. So do your best to pick that proper real estate agent that's going to have your best interest at heart, that's going to know your property in and out on whether he or she is selling it, or know what property in and out of the one that you're trying to buy, to get you in front of that right buyer or seller to get the deal done. Feel free to drop your comments below about your thoughts on this NAR settlement and what you think about the new rules that are coming into place. If you would like to see a short history lesson on how NAR even became a thing and why buyer agency even exists, watch this video right here. My name is NashiraGamino, your Las Vegas realtor. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.